Have you ever stopped to consider how deeply our lives are governed by the steady, relentless march of time? Every morning alarm, every birthday celebration, every seasonal change we anticipate, all of it rests upon an invisible framework that tells us not just what time it is, but what time means. Yet this framework, this intricate dance of days and months and years, is not a law of nature. It is a breathtaking human invention, a monumental achievement crafted by ancient visionaries who looked up at the heavens and dared to impose order upon the infinite. Without their genius, our world would be adrift in chaos, with no way to plan for the future or honor the past. Today, we are going to unmask these architects of time, the brilliant minds who first captured the cosmos in a code of days and gave humanity its most precious gift, a shared tomorrow. Our journey begins not in a laboratory or a library, but under the vast, open skies of antiquity, where priest astronomers in Mesopotamia meticulously tracked the wanderings of planets, where Mayan scribes calculated celestial cycles with staggering precision, and where Egyptian scholars aligned their monuments with the rising of stars. These were the original timekeepers, the master builders of reality itself. They didn't just invent calendars, they engineered entire worldviews, weaving mathematics, mythology, and meticulous observation into systems so robust that their echoes are felt in every modern device that tells us the date. The very concept of a 7-day week, the length of our year, the reason we have leap years, these are not arbitrary decisions. They are the living legacy of civilizations long gone, a direct line connecting their stone observatories to the smartphone in your hand. This story is more than a history lesson. It is a key to understanding the very architecture of our reality. It's about uncovering the hidden foundations of our daily existence and recognizing the incredible ingenuity it took to build them. As we explore the origins of the calendars we take for granted, you will begin to see the fingerprints of these ancient engineers everywhere, in your daily planner, in global holidays, in the rhythm of the seasons. You will discover how their celestial observations solved practical problems of survival and shaped spiritual beliefs, creating a bridge between the earth and the heavens that still stands firm thousands of years later. So prepare to have your perception of time forever transformed, to see the familiar numbers on the clock not as a given, but as the culmination of one of humanity's most profound and enduring collaborations with the universe. To truly grasp the monumental leap these early societies made, we must first step into their world, a world without our modern buffers against nature's whims. Their existence was an intimate and often perilous dialogue with the environment. The shortening of days wasn't just a signal to bring a heavier coat. It was an urgent warning that the time for gathering food was running out. The appearance of a specific star on the horizon wasn't a pretty sight for stargazing. It was a critical bulletin announcing the imminent arrival of rains that would either nourish their fields or wash away their homes. Their survival was a complex puzzle where the most important pieces were not made by hand, but were written across the sky. This primal, desperate need to anticipate what came next is the bedrock upon which all timekeeping was built. It was the original catalyst, the fundamental human drive to move from simply reacting to chaos to proactively planning within a framework of order. Consider the incredible ingenuity required to make that shift. The very first calendars were not drawn on paper or carved into stone. They were written in the landscape itself. A notch on a bone, a stack of stones, a particular blooming flower, these were the earliest markers of passing days and seasons. They were hyper-local, deeply personal, and entirely tied to a single group's immediate surroundings. But as societies grew from nomadic bands into settled agricultural communities, the stakes became infinitely higher. The entire economy of an emerging civilization like Sumer or Egypt was built upon the success of a single harvest. Missing the optimal window for planting by even a few days could lead to crop failure, famine, and the collapse of social order. The margin for error was zero. This pressure is what transformed simple observation into a sophisticated science. It forced the development of a shared, reliable system that could be communicated across an entire population, from the farmer in the field to the priest in the temple. This is where the sacred and the practical became beautifully and inextricably intertwined. For these ancient cultures, there was no separation between the physical world and the spiritual one. A solar eclipse wasn't a predictable astronomical event. It was a dragon swallowing the sun. The annual flooding of the Nile wasn't just a hydrological cycle. It was the tears of the goddess Isis, a divine gift of fertility and life. By creating a calendar that accurately predicted these events, the priest astronomers weren't just doing agricultural planning. They were demonstrating their unique ability to commune with the gods and understand the divine will. The calendar became the ultimate source of their authority and the central organizing principle of their entire society. Religious festivals were scheduled to coincide with solstices and equinoxes. Tax collection dates were set after the harvest, and the reigns of kings were measured in predictable, orderly years. The calendar was the operating system for their entire civilization, a shared rhythm that synchronized every aspect of human activity with the perceived rhythm of the cosmos. The Egyptian example is perhaps the most powerful illustration of this synergy. Their calendar was quite literally the heartbeat of their empire, and its pulse was the Nile. They observed that the heliacal rising of the star we call Sirius, when it first becomes visible just before dawn after a period of invisibility, coincided almost perfectly with the annual, life-giving inundation of the river. This celestial signal was their anchor. It allowed them to develop a calendar with 3 perfectly defined seasons of 4 months each: Akhit, the season of inundation; Peret, the season of emergence when the waters receded and planting could begin; and Shemu, the season of harvest. This was not an abstract division of time. It was a direct narrative of their survival, etched into the very fabric of their year. By giving this natural process a name and a place within a structured system, they transformed a potentially terrifying act of nature into a predictable, manageable, and even holy event. They didn't just track time, they gave it meaning, purpose, and a story that connected every individual to the stability and prosperity of the state. This foundational achievement, the creation of a predictable, repeatable cycle of time, didn't just set the stage for more complex systems. It gave humanity its first true sense of a future that could be planned for, a tomorrow that could be confidently expected. While the Egyptians built their empire on the steady, solar rhythm of the Nile, another celestial body was capturing the imagination of cultures across the globe, offering a different, more intimate pulse of time. Look up on any clear night, and you cannot miss its silent, majestic transformation. It begins as a slender silver crescent, grows to a brilliant, perfect circle of light, and then slowly fades back into darkness. This relentless, predictable cycle of the moon provided humanity with its first truly universal clock. Its phases are so visibly dramatic and so perfectly timed, each cycle lasting roughly 29.5 days, that it became the most natural and intuitive way to mark the passage of time for countless early societies. From the bustling cities of Mesopotamia to the philosophical courts of ancient China, the waxing and waning moon became the foundational heartbeat of human civilization, giving us our earliest concept of a month. This was not an abstract calculation, it was a direct observation. Each time that thin crescent reappeared in the twilight sky, it signaled a powerful symbolic new beginning, a clean slate, and the start of a fresh cycle of life, labor, and ritual. But this beautiful, luminous system contained a fundamental mathematical flaw that these ancient astronomers quickly discovered. While the lunar cycle is perfect for marking months, it fails to align neatly with the journey of the Earth around the Sun. If you multiply the 29.5-day lunar cycle by 12, you get a year that is only about 354 days long. This creates a significant shortfall of nearly 11 days when compared to the true solar year of 365.25 days. At first, this discrepancy might seem small, almost negligible, but over just a few years, that tiny gap compounds into a massive drift. Imagine a calendar that tells you it's time to plant your seeds, but outside your window, the ground is still frozen solid because the calendar's spring has shifted into the heart of winter. For an agricultural society, this wasn't a minor inconvenience, it was a direct threat to their survival. Their entire way of life depended on the calendar being in lockstep with the seasons, and the purely lunar year was slowly but surely falling out of sync with the natural world it was meant to describe. Confronted with this existential problem, these early timekeeping geniuses devised a brilliant and elegant solution: intercalation. This is the practice of periodically inserting an extra 13th month into the year to resynchronize the lunar cycle with the solar year. The Babylonians, master astronomers and mathematicians, perfected this system. They observed the heavens with such precision that they established a sophisticated 19-year cycle, within which they would add 7 extra months at precisely calculated intervals. This complex dance of timekeeping was an astonishing feat of empirical science. It meant that their lunar calendar could remain the core of their cultural and religious life, while still being practically useful for farmers and administrators who needed to know when the seasons would actually arrive. The decision of when to intercalate was not taken lightly. It was a matter of state importance, often decreed by royal astronomers and priests who held the profound responsibility of keeping the entire society in harmony with the cosmos. This ancient struggle to balance the moon and the sun has left an indelible mark on our modern world, most visibly in our religious traditions. The Islamic calendar, for instance, remains a purely lunar system to this day. This is why the holy month of Ramadan moves through all the seasons over a roughly 33-year cycle, beginning 11 days earlier each solar year. The Hebrew calendar is a magnificent hybrid, a lunisolar system that primarily uses lunar months but employs a complex pattern of intercalation, adding a second month of Adar in 7 out of every 19 years to ensure that holidays like Passover always occur in the spring. This enduring legacy of the lunar calendar is a powerful testament to its primal pull on the human spirit. It connects billions of people in the modern age to the same celestial rhythms that captivated their ancestors thousands of years ago, a continuous thread of observation and reverence that has never been broken. The lunar calendar was humanity's first great attempt to impose order on the cosmos, and while it was imperfect, its rhythm still echoes in our holidays, our rituals, and our innate connection to the night sky. Yet this elegant lunar rhythm, for all its celestial beauty, presented a profound and practical problem for societies whose survival was tied to the Earth. The moon's cycle is a master of months but a poor keeper of years. Its constant, shimmering dance through the sky simply does not align with the sun's grand, slow journey that defines our seasons. This growing realization that to truly thrive, humanity needed to sync with the source of all life and growth sparked a revolution in timekeeping, a revolution led by the sun. This shift wasn't merely an astronomical adjustment. It was a fundamental change in human consciousness, a move from tracking intimate, monthly cycles to mastering the immense, generative power of the annual solar cycle that dictates the very conditions of life on Earth. The architects of this solar revolution were the ancient Egyptians. Their entire civilization was a gift of the Nile, and their existence depended on predicting its annual, life-giving flood with absolute precision. Through centuries of meticulous observation, they made a stunning connection. They noticed that the Nile's inundation coincided not just with the rising of Sirius, but with the sun's position in the sky as well. This led them to develop a radically new system, a civil calendar of 365 days, divided into 12 clean months of 30 days each, with a brief but crucial addition of 5 extra days tacked on at the end. These weren't just any days, they were known as the days upon the year, a time outside of time dedicated to celebration and reverence for the gods. This was a monumental leap. For the first time, a calendar was freed from the immediate tyranny of the lunar phase. It was a pure, abstract, and administrative tool, running independently of the moon's whims and providing a stable, predictable framework for planning the harvest, collecting taxes, and organizing the massive state projects that built the pyramids. But even this solar calendar contained a tiny, almost invisible flaw with enormous consequences. The true solar year, the time it takes for the Earth to complete one full orbit around the Sun, is not 365 days exactly. It is 365 days and approximately 6 hours. Those 6 hours might seem insignificant, but just like the lunar drift, they accumulate. Over a century, the Egyptian calendar would be off by about 25 days. This meant that over the centuries, their official New Year's Day would slowly slide through the seasons, and the sacred connection between their calendar and the Nile's flood would eventually break. The brilliant solution to this final piece of the puzzle would come from far to the north, from the heart of an expanding Roman Empire. By the 1st century before the Common Era, the Roman calendar was a chaotic and politicized mess, so out of sync with the seasons that the harvest festival was sometimes falling in the middle of winter. Enter Julius Caesar. Advised by the Alexandrian astronomer Sosigenes, Caesar undertook a radical reform in the year 45 before the Common Era. He took the elegant Egyptian solar model and refined it with a stroke of mathematical genius, the leap year. The Julian calendar decree stated that every 4 years, an extra day would be added to the month of February, effectively banking those accumulated 6 hours from each year to account for the full quarter day. This simple, elegant mechanism of intercalation finally tamed the solar year. For the first time in history, a calendar could run for centuries without losing its lockstep with the seasons. It was a system built for an empire for long-term governance, trade, and conquest. It provided a unified, stable measure of time across vast distances and diverse cultures. The sun had not just been observed, it had been harnessed. Its immense, impersonal cycle was now captured within a human-made system of breathtaking precision, setting the stage for the global timekeeping standard we still live by today. This was the ultimate triumph of solar time, a legacy of foresight and order that continues to shape our modern world. While the Romans and Egyptians were building solar empires in the Old World, on the other side of the globe, in the dense rainforests of Mesoamerica, a civilization was achieving a feat of timekeeping so complex and so precise it rivals our own modern understanding. The Maya did not merely track time, they engineered it, weaving together multiple, interlocking cycles into a grand cosmological machine that saw time not as a straight line, but as a series of sacred, repeating patterns. Their system stands as a breathtaking testament to human intellect, a masterpiece of mathematics and astronomy conceived in complete isolation from the influences of Europe and Asia. Where other cultures sought to align their calendars with the practical needs of agriculture or administration, the Maya sought something far more profound: to map the very fabric of the universe itself. At the heart of their system were three distinct calendars operating simultaneously, like perfectly meshed gears in an immense celestial clock. The first, the Hob, was their civil calendar, a solar year of 365 days divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short 5-day period considered to be extremely unlucky and fraught with danger. This was the calendar that governed the agricultural cycle, the seasons of planting and harvest, and the rhythms of everyday life. Running alongside it was the Tzolk'in, the sacred 260-day calendar. This wasn't based on any obvious astronomical cycle like the sun or moon. Its power was purely ritual and spiritual. It consisted of 20-day names combined with 13 numbers, creating a 260-day cycle that was used for divination, for naming children, for determining the auspiciousness of events, and for scheduling religious ceremonies. Each day carried its own unique energy, its own divine patronage, and its own fate. The true genius of the Maya was how they made these two calendars interact. Imagine two wheels, one with 365 teeth and another with 260. They begin turning together, and a specific combination of a Hob date and a Tzolk'in date will only repeat once every 52 years. This period, known as the calendar round, was a fundamental unit of time for the Maya. The completion of a calendar round was a moment of tremendous cosmic significance, a time when the world was thought to renew itself and avert potential catastrophe. But even this 52-year cycle was not the full extent of their vision. For recording history on a grand, epic scale, they developed the long count. This was a linear count of days from a fixed starting point, a mythological foundation date that corresponds to August 11, 3114 before the Common Era in our Gregorian calendar. The long count allowed them to inscribe dates on their monuments that stretched thousands of years into the past and future with pinpoint accuracy, giving them a historical consciousness that was virtually unparalleled in the ancient world. To achieve this staggering precision, the Maya became unparalleled astronomers and mathematicians. Without telescopes, metal tools, or the wheel, they charted the movements of Venus with an error of just 1 day in 500 years. They calculated the lunar synodic month to within a few seconds of its modern value. Their secret weapon was a sophisticated Vijsimal, or base 20, number system that included the concept of zero, a revolutionary mathematical concept that wouldn't appear in Europe for centuries. This allowed them to perform complex calculations and record enormous numbers. They built elaborate observatories like the Caracol at Chichen Itza, with windows and sightlines strategically aligned to mark the solstices, equinoxes, and the extreme rising and setting points of Venus. Their calendar was not an abstract theory. It was a living science, continuously refined through relentless observation of the night sky. This deep understanding of cyclical time permeated every aspect of Mayan life, creating a worldview that stands in stark contrast to the linear, progressive timeline that dominates Western thought. For the Maya, time was not an arrow shooting toward an unknown future. It was a wheel, and history was not a series of unique events but a pattern of recurring energies and lessons. This is why their prophecies were not about predicting a single, fixed destiny, but about recognizing the return of certain conditions. The much misunderstood end date of the 13th Bacton cycle in the long count in 2012 was a perfect example of this. In our modern, linear interpretation, we mistook the end of a major cycle for the end of time itself. For the ancient Maya, it was simply the turning of a great wheel, the closing of one chapter and the inevitable, natural beginning of the next, not an apocalypse but a transformation, a return to a point of cosmic alignment and potential renewal. Their magnificent calendar system was ultimately a tool for finding order and sacred meaning in the infinite flow of time, a legacy of intellectual grandeur that challenges our most basic assumptions about history, prophecy, and our place in the universe. Yet for all its revolutionary stability, the calendar of Julius Caesar contained a tiny, almost imperceptible mathematical error that would slowly accumulate over the centuries like a clock falling ever so slightly out of tune. The problem lay in the beautiful, elegant simplicity of the leap year rule itself. By adding one day every 4 years, the Julian calendar assumed the length of the solar year was exactly 365 1/4 days. But the true time it takes for the Earth to complete its journey around the Sun is just slightly less, about 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. The Julian year was overestimating the actual solar year by a little under 11 minutes. 11 minutes seems trivial, almost laughably insignificant on a human scale. But in the grand, patient mechanics of astronomy, those minutes add up. Over a century, the calendar would gain roughly 3/4 of a day. Over a millennium, it would be off by more than a week. This tiny flaw meant that the carefully calculated dates for religious festivals, most critically the all-important Easter, were slowly but surely drifting away from their intended astronomical anchors, particularly the spring equinox. This creeping inaccuracy became impossible for the Catholic Church to ignore by the late 16th century. The vernal equinox, which was supposed to fall on or around March 21st as established by the Council of Nicaea in 325, had by that point drifted a full 10 days earlier, landing around March 11th. For a church that based its most sacred holiday on the first Sunday after the first full moon following that equinox, this was not a minor administrative issue. It was a profound theological problem. The very rhythm of the liturgical year was becoming unmoored from the celestial events it was meant to commemorate. The need for correction was urgent, and it fell to one of the most powerful men in the world to authorize a fix, Pope Gregory XIII. In 1582, he issued a papal bull, a formal decree that would enact the most significant calendrical adjustment the world has ever seen. This was not just a scientific endeavor, it was an immense act of faith, bureaucracy, and global authority, an attempt to once again harmonize human time with divine order. The Gregorian reform, designed by the brilliant Jesuit mathematician and astronomer Christopher Clavius, was a masterclass in pragmatic precision. Its solution was a two-part correction that was both drastic and subtle. First, to instantly realign the calendar with the season, 10 days were simply erased from existence. In that year, across much of Europe, people went to sleep on Thursday, October 4th, and woke up the next morning on Friday, October 15th. Can you imagine the sheer disorientation? Birthdays, contracts, and rent payments all vanished into a historical void. But the second, more lasting change was a new, more precise rule for leap years that would prevent the drift from happening again. The new rule stated that a year divisible by 4 would be a leap year unless it is also divisible by 100. However, if that same year is also divisible by 400, then it is a leap year after all. This complex-sounding formula elegantly removes 3 leap days every 400 years. So, the year 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not leap years, even though they are divisible by 4, because they are divisible by 100 but not by 400. But the year 2000 was a leap year because it passed all 3 tests. This adjustment brought the average length of the calendar year to 365.2425 days, stunningly close to the actual solar year, with an error of just 1 day every 3,023 years. The adoption of this new calendar, however, was anything but instantaneous or universal. It was a process fraught with political and religious tension that lasted for centuries. Catholic nations like Spain, Portugal, and Italy adopted it immediately on the Pope's command. Protestant countries, deeply suspicious of anything coming from Rome, resisted for decades, even a century or more. Great Britain and its American colonies didn't make the switch until 1752, by which time they had to skip 11 days to catch up. As the British writer William Hogarth quipped, crowds gathered in the streets chanting, "Give us back our 11 days." Fearing they had been cheated out of time itself, Orthodox Christian countries held out even longer. Russia didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1918, which is why the event is known as the October Revolution, even though it occurred in November according to the modern calendar. Greece, the last European holdout, finally switched in 1923. This staggered, fractured adoption created a bizarre period in world history where travelers crossing borders could effectively move through time, and historical correspondence between nations often carried two dates to avoid confusion. The Gregorian calendar's journey to becoming the global civil standard we use today was not a story of universal acceptance, but one of gradual, often reluctant, adoption driven by the practical necessities of international trade, diplomacy, and communication. It stands as the final, triumphant chapter in humanity's millennia-long quest to perfectly capture the sun's rhythm in a framework of our own making. That seemingly insignificant 11-minute discrepancy in the Julian calendar is a powerful lesson in how tiny errors, when left unchecked, can steer entire civilizations off course over the long arc of history. For over 16 centuries, those minutes quietly stacked up, day after day, year after year, until the cumulative effect became impossible to ignore. By the late 1500s, the calendar had drifted a full 10 days out of sync with the actual solar year. This wasn't just an abstract astronomical problem. It had profound, tangible consequences for the most powerful institution in the Western world. The celebration of Easter, the cornerstone of the Christian liturgical year, is calculated based on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the vernal equinox. But the equinox, which was supposed to fall on March 21st, was now occurring around March 11th. This meant the Church was basing its most sacred holiday on a date that was no longer connected to the celestial reality it was meant to honor. The very rhythm of faith was becoming unmoored, a crisis of timing that demanded a definitive solution. The task of repairing time itself fell to Pope Gregory XIII, a man determined to restore both theological and celestial order. In 1582, he issued a papal bull, a decree of immense authority that would literally erase time to set things right. The solution, crafted by the Jesuit astronomer Christopher Clavius, was brilliantly pragmatic yet utterly startling for the common person. To instantly snap the calendar back into alignment with the seasons, 10 days were simply omitted. Across much of Catholic Europe, people went to bed on the evening of Thursday, October 4th, and woke up the next morning on Friday, October 15th. Imagine the sheer disorientation: lost birthdays, shifted market days, and contracts thrown into confusion. It was a breathtaking act of administrative power, demonstrating that even the flow of days could be commanded by a central authority for a greater good. But the true genius of the Gregorian reform wasn't this one-time correction. It was the new, exquisitely precise rule it established to prevent the drift from ever happening again. The old Julian system had a simple 4-year leap year cycle. The new rule introduced a layer of elegant complexity. A year divisible by 4 is a leap year, unless that year is also divisible by 100. However, if that same year is divisible by 400, then the leap year is reinstated. This means that the year 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not leap years, even though they are divisible by 4. But the year 2000 was a leap year because it passed all 3 tests. This intricate dance effectively removes 3 leap days every 400 years, fine-tuning the average length of the year to an astonishing 365.2425 days. This brought the margin of error down to a mere 26 seconds per year, a level of accuracy so profound that it will take over 3,000 years for the calendar to accumulate a single day of error. The adoption of this new, improved calendar, however, was a story not of instant unity, but of deep division and slow, grudging acceptance. It immediately became a symbol of the fierce religious and political rivalries fracturing Europe. Catholic nations like Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Poland adopted it swiftly on the Pope's command. Protestant kingdoms, however, saw it not as a scientific advancement but as a popish plot, and vehemently refused to follow a decree from Rome. Great Britain and its American colonies held out for nearly 170 years, not making the switch until 1752. By then, the drift had grown to 11 days, leading to public outcry and protests with crowds famously, though perhaps apocryphally, demanding, "Give us back our 11 days." Fearing they had been cheated out of life and wages, Orthodox Christian nations operating under their own religious authority resisted even longer. Russia didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until after the 1917 revolution, which is why the event known as the October Revolution actually took place in November according to the modern calendar. Greece, the final European holdout, didn't switch until 1923. This staggered adoption created a bizarre and confusing period in global history where the date depended entirely on where you were standing. A traveler moving from Paris to London could effectively journey backwards 11 days in time. International correspondence, trade agreements, and historical records from this era often bear double dates to avoid confusion. The Gregorian calendar's eventual triumph as the global civil standard had little to do with religious agreement and everything to do with practical necessity. The rise of international commerce, diplomacy, and communication in the 18th and 19th centuries demanded a unified timetable. The economic and administrative power of the vast British Empire and other colonial forces eventually made the Gregorian system the de facto standard for the entire world, a tool of synchronization for an increasingly interconnected planet. In its journey, we see the complete story of modern timekeeping, a fusion of ancient astronomy, religious authority, political will, and ultimately, the relentless practical demands of a world learning to operate as one. Yet, even as this solar standard achieved global dominance, it never fully erased the powerful, primal pull of the moon. In the sacred rhythms of 2 of the world's major religions, lunar timekeeping isn't a relic. It is a living, breathing reality that continues to define the spiritual lives of billions. These calendars offer a profound counterpoint to the Gregorian system, proving that in our modern world, multiple conceptions of time can not only coexist but can also enrich our understanding of history, faith, and cultural identity. They are not mere alternatives, they are parallel streams of time, each carrying a different set of values and a unique connection to the cosmos. The Islamic Hijri calendar stands as the most profound example of a purely lunar system still in active use today. Its beginning is marked not by an astronomical event, but by a pivotal moment in human history, the Hijra, the migration of the Prophet Muhammad and his followers from Mecca to Medina in 622 of the Common Era. This foundation immediately establishes the calendar's purpose. It is a measure of spiritual history, a timeline of faith, comprising 12 months based solely on the cycles of the moon. the Hijri year is approximately 354 days long, creating an annual discrepancy of about 11 days with the solar year. This difference is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a feature of deep theological significance. It means that each year, Islamic holy months and festivals, like the fasting month of Ramadan or the pilgrimage period of Hajj, journey through all the seasons over a full 33-year cycle. This migratory quality of sacred time fosters a unique spiritual experience. Observing the dawn to dusk fast of Ramadan is a profoundly different discipline when the days are short and cool in winter than when they are long and intensely hot in the height of summer. There is a powerful lesson in this annual shift, a reminder that submission to faith is a constant, unwavering commitment that must be maintained regardless of external, worldly conditions. The start of each month is not determined by complex calculations locked in an almanac, but by the actual physical sighting of the new crescent moon. This practice connects every Muslim community directly to the heavens, grounding their ritual life in a tangible, observable celestial event. It is a system that prioritizes spiritual rhythm over agricultural or administrative convenience, creating a distinct temporal identity that consciously operates outside the dominant solar framework of the secular world. Judaism's Hebrew calendar, by contrast, presents a magnificent solution to the very problem that pure lunar systems create: the disconnect from the solar seasons. It is a lunisolar calendar, a sophisticated hybrid that masterfully synchronizes the moon's cycles with the sun's year. This ingenious system uses lunar months, each beginning with the new moon, ensuring that Jewish holidays always fall on the same lunar phase. But to prevent these holidays from drifting through the seasons, an entire extra month is added 7 times within a 19-year cycle. This process of intercalation, adding a second month of Adar in the spring, is an ancient astronomical practice perfected by the Hebrew scribes. The primary driver for this complex adjustment is deeply rooted in biblical commandment. The Torah explicitly instructs that the holiday of Passover must always be observed in the spring, in the month of Aviv, which means green ear, referring to the barley harvest. Allowing Passover to slide into winter or summer would be a direct violation of this divine law. Therefore, the Hebrew calendar is a beautiful negotiation between celestial observation and religious obligation. It honors the lunar cycles that define the months while respecting the solar cycle that God ordained for His appointed festivals. Major holidays are not just commemorations, they are inextricably linked to their seasonal context. Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, is an autumn harvest festival. Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, celebrates the late spring wheat harvest and the giving of the Torah. The calendar itself becomes a map of sacred history and agricultural life woven together. This system is so precise that its mathematical rules for insertion of the leap month were formalized by the sage Hillel II around the 4th century of the Common Era, creating a fixed calendar that can be projected far into the future while still adhering to its astronomical and religious principles. It is a testament to a deep desire to live in harmony with both the heavens and the divine word. The enduring vitality of these calendars reveals something far greater than just a method for marking days. They are bedrock elements of cultural resilience and identity. For centuries, often under persecution and diaspora, maintaining a separate calendar was an act of defiance and preservation. It was a way to declare that the community's rhythm, its sacred time, was not subject to the dictates of a ruling power. The calendar scheduled not just holidays but all of life, dictating days of rest, periods of celebration, and times of mourning. To live by a different calendar is to inhabit a parallel world of meaning, to see time itself through a different lens. In a globalized world that runs on Gregorian time, the conscious choice to also honor the Hijri or Hebrew date is a powerful daily reaffirmation of faith and heritage. It is a declaration that some things, the sacred, the communal, the traditional, operate on a different clock, one that measures values more profound than mere efficiency or commerce. These ancient systems are not outdated. They are enduring vessels of meaning, carrying the wisdom of the past into the present and ensuring that the unique rhythm of faith continues to beat for generations to come. While the Gregorian calendar now organizes our global affairs and the rhythms of Islam and Judaism maintain powerful spiritual cycles, another system of breathtaking complexity has been harmonizing heaven and earth for thousands of years in East Asia. The traditional Chinese calendar is a monumental achievement in lunisolar timekeeping, a sophisticated framework that doesn't just track days but weaves together the motions of the sun, the moon, and the very flow of energy through the universe. It stands as a profound philosophy of time, where astronomy, agriculture, and human destiny are inextricably linked in a continuous, dynamic dance. This isn't merely a tool for marking dates. It's a comprehensive worldview, a guide for living in perfect sync with the natural order, and its cultural resonance remains so powerful that it continues to shape the lives of over 1 billion people today, even alongside the modern Gregorian system. At its practical core, the Chinese calendar is a masterful solution to the same ancient problem that challenged the Hebrews and the Babylonians, reconciling the moon's monthly cycle with the sun's annual journey. Each month begins with a dark, new moon, growing to a full moon at the midpoint before waning again. This creates 12 beautiful lunar months, but as we know, 12 lunar cycles only add up to about 354 days, falling short of the solar year. To correct this drift and keep the calendar in lockstep with the seasons, absolutely vital for planting and harvesting in an agricultural society, the Chinese astronomers devised an elegant system of intercalation. Roughly every 3 years, they insert an entire extra 13th month into the year. The decision of where to place this intercalary month is not random. It is determined by a precise rule based on the 24 solar terms. These terms are 15-day periods that precisely map the sun's position in its annual path, splitting the year into nodes that describe the subtle shifts in climate and agriculture, from the spring equinox and grain rain to the great heat and severe cold. A month that contains no major solar term becomes the leap month, ensuring that events like the winter solstice always occur in the 11th month, maintaining that crucial celestial harmony. This meticulous structure ensures that traditional festivals, which are tied to lunar phases, always occur in their appropriate seasonal context. The most important celebration of the year, the Spring Festival or Chinese New Year, falls on the second new moon after the winter solstice. This guarantees that the holiday, while lunar-based, always heralds the end of winter and the beginning of spring's renewal. Other festivals, like the Mid-Autumn Festival, are celebrated on a full moon, specifically the 15th day of the 8th month, when the moon is at its brightest and roundest, perfectly coinciding with the harvest moon. This fusion creates a deeply satisfying rhythm. The lunar calendar provides the beautiful, poetic timing for celebration under the moon's glow, while the solar underpinnings ensure these celebrations feel grounded in the correct time of the seasonal year. But to view the Chinese calendar solely through this lunisolar lens is to see only the surface. Its true depth and uniqueness lie in a parallel system of cycles that operates on a much grander scale. The sexagenary cycle, a 60-year wheel of time that is the heartbeat of Chinese metaphysics. This cycle is formed by the combination of two sets of symbols, the 10 heavenly stems and the 12 earthly branches. The stems are tied to the 5 classical elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, each expressed in both a yin and yang aspect. The branches are most commonly associated with the 12 animals of the zodiac: the rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. By pairing one stem with one branch, a unique combination is created, and it takes 60 such pairs to complete a full cycle before it begins again. This is far more than a quirky way to label years. It is a complex astrological and philosophical system. Each year in the cycle is believed to carry its own specific quality and energy, influencing everything from personal fortune and compatibility to historical trends and economic cycles. The character of a wood dragon year is profoundly different from that of a fire dragon year, and understanding these nuances is a key aspect of traditional life, guiding major decisions from marriage and business ventures to naming a child. This ancient framework is not a relic confined to history books. It is a vibrant, living tradition. While the People's Republic of China adopted the Gregorian calendar for official and administrative purposes in the early 20th century, the traditional calendar continues to reign over cultural and spiritual life. The entire country still comes to a standstill during the Lunar New Year for the world's largest annual migration, as hundreds of millions of people travel to their ancestral homes to reunite with family. Festivals like the Dragon Boat Festival and the aforementioned Mid-Autumn Festival are national holidays calculated by the old system. Farmers still consult the solar terms for guidance on planting, even as they use modern technology. And perhaps most personally, everyone knows their zodiac animal, a fundamental piece of identity that connects them to a vast, ancient cycle of time. This creates a fascinating dual consciousness in the modern Chinese world. One can effortlessly function in the Gregorian calendar for work and international affairs, while simultaneously living by the rhythms and wisdom of the traditional system for cultural and personal matters. It is the ultimate testament to the adaptability and enduring power of these ancient timekeeping systems, proving they are not competitors to the global standard but rather complementary layers of meaning, offering a depth of connection to history, family, and the cosmos that a purely solar calendar could never provide on its own. While the Chinese system presents a unified lunisolar philosophy and the Hebrew calendar a solution for biblical commandment, the Indian subcontinent offers perhaps the most breathtakingly diverse and complex tapestry of timekeeping traditions the world has ever known. Here, the concept of a single national calendar is a modern invention. For millennia, the rhythm of life has been dictated by a symphony of regional, religious, and astronomical systems that coexist and overlap, each serving a distinct purpose and reflecting a unique aspect of a profoundly cyclical worldview. This isn't a story of one calendar but of dozens, each a testament to the deep intellectual and spiritual currents that have flowed through India for ages. Two of the most prominent historical systems are the Vikram Samvat and the Saka calendar, both magnificent examples of lunisolar engineering. The Vikram Samvat, which began in 57 before the Common Era, is widely used in northern and western India and marks the beginning of the new year with the first day after the new moon in the month of Chaitra, which typically falls in March or April. The Saka calendar, adopted as the official national calendar of India in 1957 for civil purposes alongside the Gregorian, has its epoch in 78 of the Common Era and also follows a lunisolar structure. Like their Chinese and Hebrew counterparts, these calendars synchronize the lunar months with the solar year through the occasional insertion of an extra month, an adhik Mars, ensuring that festivals remain tied to the seasons. But alongside these, purely solar calendars thrive, such as the Tamil calendar of South India and the Bengali calendar of the East, which are directly aligned with the solar cycle and often commence their new year on the day of the vernal equinox, a direct celebration of the sun's power and balance. The true heart of Indian timekeeping, however, lies in a document far more intricate than a simple wall calendar, the Panchangam. This Hindu almanac is a dense, daily guide that is less about the date and more about the quality of time itself. The word Panchangam means 5 limbs, and it integrates 5 key astronomical elements for each day: the lunar day or Thai, the weekday or Vara, the lunar mansion or Nakshatra, the yoga, a specific period calculated by combining the sun and moon's longitude, and the karana, half of a Thai. A priest or astrologer compiling a Panchangam doesn't just look at the position of the sun and moon, they calculate the complex dance of all the planets. This creates a unique astrological fingerprint for every single moment, determining whether it is auspicious or inauspicious for launching a business, conducting a wedding ceremony, planting a field, or even starting a journey. The Panchangam is the ultimate expression of time as a living, breathing force, with each moment carrying its own unique energy and potential. This meticulous attention to the celestial mechanics is underpinned by a philosophical vision of time that is almost incomprehensible in its scale and cyclical nature. Western linear time, with a definitive beginning and end, is a fleeting concept compared to the vast cosmic cycles of Hindu cosmology. Time is divided into immense, repeating epochs called yugas. We are currently believed to be in the Kali Yuga, the last and darkest of 4 ages, which began over 5,000 years ago and is said to last for 432,000 years. 1,000 such cycles form a single day of Brahma, the creator god. This isn't just mythology, it's a philosophical framework that encourages a long-view perspective on human existence, where entire civilizations rise and fall as mere blips in a grand, eternal cycle of creation, preservation, and dissolution. Despite the official adoption of the Gregorian calendar for administration, this ancient, pluralistic temporal ecosystem is vibrantly alive. Your birthday might be on a fixed Gregorian date, but your wedding will almost certainly be scheduled for a muhurta, a precise, astrologically determined window of time found in the Panchangam. Massive festivals like Diwali, the Festival of Lights, or Holi, the Festival of Colors, surge through the streets on dates set by the lunar cycle. Farmers across the countryside still plant and harvest according to traditional solar markers tied to the equinoxes and solstices. This creates a fascinating reality where millions of Indians effortlessly navigate between multiple calendars, using the Gregorian for work and school, but living the most meaningful moments of their lives, their worship, their celebrations, their marriages, their agriculture, by the rhythms of a much older, more personal time. This rich tapestry doesn't just challenge Western linearity, it offers a radically different way of being in the world, where time is not a straight line to be raced along, but a deep, sacred, and endlessly repeating circle to be experienced in all its nuanced celestial complexity. To truly appreciate the genius of these ancient astronomers, we must strip away our modern preconceptions. They did not have telescopes, satellites, or supercomputers. Their laboratory was the night sky, their tools were their eyes, a few simple instruments for measuring angles, and an almost superhuman level of patience and dedication. They were the ultimate pattern recognizers, staring into the seemingly chaotic dance of lights above and slowly, painstakingly, deciphering its underlying order over generations. A single anomaly, like a planet reversing its course in a retrograde loop, wasn't a problem to be ignored. It was a cosmic puzzle to be solved, a message from the gods to be decoded. Their work was a continuous, multi-generational project, with each priest astronomer building upon the meticulous records of their predecessors, adding another day to point to a celestial ledger that stretched back centuries. This long-term commitment transformed random observations into statistically significant data, allowing them to predict eclipses, track planetary cycles, and ultimately engineer time itself. The methods they developed to capture this celestial data were feats of ingenuity. The most fundamental tool was the gnomon, a simple vertical stick placed in the ground. By meticulously tracking the length and direction of its shadow throughout the day and across the seasons, these early scientists could determine the exact moment of the solar noon, chart the sun's changing path, and pinpoint the solstices and equinoxes with remarkable accuracy. More sophisticated structures like the Egyptian merkit, a sighting tool made from a palm rib with a slit in it, allowed for precise alignment with specific stars. But their ambitions soon outgrew handheld instruments. They began to build their observatories into the very landscape, creating monumental stone computers that locked celestial events into architecture. Stonehenge is the most famous example, its massive heel stone capturing the first light of the summer solstice sunrise, but similar structures exist across the globe. The sun dagger on Fajada Butte in Choco Canyon uses 3 large stone slabs to cast a dagger of sunlight onto a spiral petroglyph, marking the solstices and equinoxes with theatrical precision. These weren't just temples, they were permanent, unchanging records of cosmic knowledge, ensuring that even if the oral tradition was lost, the alignment itself would continue to mark the critical turning points of the year for millennia. Nowhere was this celestial observation more critically tied to survival than in ancient Egypt. For them, the star we call Sirius, known as Sopdet, was not just a bright point of light, it was a divine herald. Each year, after a period of invisibility, Sirius would reappear just above the eastern horizon moments before the sun rose. This event, known as its heliacal rising, became the most important date on their calendar because it consistently coincided with the annual, life-giving inundation of the Nile River. The floodwaters brought rich silt that fertilized the fields, making agriculture possible in an otherwise desert landscape. Predicting this event was a matter of life and death for the entire civilization. By fixating on Sirius, the Egyptian astronomers provided their society with an early warning system, a celestial signal that gave them roughly 20 days to prepare for the flood, to move livestock, secure goods, and get ready to plant. This direct, practical application of astronomy elevated the observer priests to positions of immense power and respect. They were the intermediaries who could read the messages of the gods in the stars and translate them into actionable intelligence for the kingdom. Across the Atlantic, the Maya took this celestial engineering to a level of complexity that still astounds modern scholars. Their fascination wasn't limited to the sun and moon. They became obsessed with the cycles of the planet Venus, which they associated with their god of war, Kukulkan. They calculated Venus's appearances as both the morning and evening star with an error margin of just 1 day in 500 years. This wasn't merely an academic exercise. Venus's cycles were deeply woven into their military and ritual life. The Maya believed the planet's phases held immense power, influencing the outcomes of battles. Historical records suggest they would often time their raids and wars to coincide with specific appearances of Venus, believing its energy would grant them victory. Their Dresden Codex contains detailed Venus tables, allowing priests to predict its position far into the future. This fusion of precise astronomy with warfare and statecraft shows how deeply the calendar was integrated into every facet of their society, from the spiritual to the brutally practical. The sky was a divine script, and by learning to read it, the Maya believed they could harness its power for their own ends. The legacy of these stargazers is not confined to history books. It is embedded in the very structure of our modern world. The Babylonian base 60 numerical system, developed for their astronomical calculations, is why we have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. Their meticulous records of planetary movements, preserved on countless clay tablets, provided the foundational data that astronomers like Kepler and Newton would later use to formulate the laws of planetary motion. The very concept of dividing a circle into 360 degrees is a direct gift from these ancient sky watchers. They established the fundamental patterns, the celestial clockwork, that all later science would build upon. Their work represents the birth of the scientific method itself: observation, hypothesis, prediction, and verification, all conducted on a grand cosmic scale. They proved that the universe operates not on whimsy, but on a set of knowable, predictable rules, and in doing so, they gave us the courage to continue looking up and asking questions. Their dialogue with the universe was the first great chapter in humanity's quest to understand its place in the cosmos, a conversation between earth and sky that we are still passionately engaged in today. So far, we've explored the mechanics of timekeeping, the celestial math that gave structure to the year. But to truly understand these ancient systems, we must recognize they were never just cold mathematical tools. They were living tapestries woven with the very myths, values, and stories that defined a civilization's identity. A date was never just a point on a grid. It was an opportunity to honor a god, reenact a creation story, or heed a divine omen. The calendar was the ultimate narrative device, a way to embed a culture's soul into the relentless, abstract flow of time itself. Look no further than the names of the months we still use today, a direct inheritance from the Roman system. January is named for Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings, gates, and transitions, a perfect patron for the doorway into a new year. March honors Mars, the fierce god of war, reflecting the time when the winter thaw would allow armies to march again. And then there are the powerful egos of emperors immortalized in time. July for Julius Caesar and August for his successor, Augustus, a permanent claim on the calendar that outlasted their empires. Each month was a lesson, a reminder of a divine power or a historical figure who shaped their world, ensuring that even in the most mundane act of checking the date, a Roman was participating in their own cultural story. This narrative depth reaches its most intricate form in the Maya Tzolk'in, the sacred 260-day calendar. Here, every single day was not a blank slate, but a unique combination of a number from 1 to 13 and one of 20-day names, each with its own presiding deity and a powerful set of associations. A day might be ruled by the rain god Chok and carry the energy of storms and fertility. Another might be governed by the death god, bringing a more ominous, transformative tone. A Mayan priest astronomer reading the calendar was not just scheduling events. He was interpreting the spiritual weather forecast, determining whether a day was favorable for planting, for marriage, for going to war, or for staying safely indoors. Time was a dynamic, living force pulsating with divine intention, and the calendar was the essential guide for navigating its currents. Perhaps the most beautiful example of mythology explaining cosmic order comes from ancient Egypt. Their civil calendar was a clean, 365-day solar year, a masterpiece of administrative simplicity, but they were acutely aware that the true solar year was about a quarter of a day longer. Instead of ignoring this discrepancy, they wove it into their most sacred creation myth. Those 5 extra days needed to complete the solar cycle were known as the epigomenal days, and they were considered to be outside the normal year, a time of danger and potential chaos. Mythology explained that the sky goddess Nut was forbidden by the sun god Ra from giving birth on any day of the year. The clever god Thoth gambled with the moon and won enough light to create these 5 extra days, during which Nut gave birth to her 5 children: Osiris, Horus the Elder, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. So the very chaos of the mathematical discrepancy was given a divine story, a sacred reason for being. The calendar didn't just measure time, it contained and explained the universe's inherent imperfections. These ancient echoes resonate powerfully in our modern week. When you mark a meeting for Thursday, you are unconsciously invoking the thunderous power of the Norse god Thor. Friday carries the gentle influence of Frigg or Freyja, goddesses of love and fertility. Sunday and Monday remain straightforward tributes to the sun and moon, the most obvious celestial bodies. These names are fossils of a time when the rhythm of life was directly tied to the worship of these deities, a linguistic heirloom that connects our hurried, digital schedules to the pagan traditions of our ancestors. The stories may have faded, but the names endure, a whisper of myth in the machinery of modern life. Understanding this symbolic layer is the key to appreciating a calendar's true purpose. It was never just a tool for farmers to know when to plant or for kings to know when to collect taxes. It was the framework upon which a society hung its identity, its values, and its connection to the divine. It answered the profound human need to not just count the days, but to make the days count, to infuse the passage of time with meaning, purpose, and story. A community that shared a calendar was not just sharing a schedule, they were sharing a worldview, participating in a sacred journey through the year together, generation after generation, reaffirming who they were and what they believed with every festival celebrated and every season turned. This drive to impose a unified measure of time was one of the most powerful and often silent weapons in the arsenal of an expanding empire. A conqueror could seize land, demand taxes, and command armies, but to truly absorb a diverse population into a single, cohesive state, they needed to synchronize the very rhythm of life itself. A shared calendar became the ultimate tool of administration, creating a common timeline for collecting taxes, mustering troops, scheduling court dates, and celebrating state-sanctioned holidays. It was a force for incredible efficiency and unity, but it was also a force of immense cultural erosion, systematically replacing local, organic systems with a centralized imperial standard. The Roman Empire provides the classic blueprint for this process. As legions marched across Europe, North Africa, and the Near East, they brought with them the Julian calendar. This was more than just a new way to count days. It was a symbol of Roman order, or Pax Romana. A governor in far-off Britain and a tax collector in Egypt could now operate on the exact same schedule, their reports neatly synchronized with the fiscal year in Rome. The calendar standardized the timing of trade fairs, the dates for legal proceedings, and the celebrations of imperial cults, creating a shared civic experience that slowly overwrote regional Celtic, Germanic, or Egyptian rhythms. This wasn't always a violent imposition. The convenience and administrative power of a stable, accurate calendar often made it an attractive adoption for local elites seeking to integrate with the Roman system of power and commerce. The Julian calendar became the operating system for the Western world for over a millennium, not solely because of its accuracy, but because of the immense political and cultural gravity of the empire that spread it. A similar, though theologically distinct, wave of standardization swept across vast territories with the rise of Islam. The Hijri calendar, with its epoch marking the Prophet's migration to Medina, was the heartbeat of the burgeoning Islamic caliphates. As these empires expanded through both conquest and trade, the lunar calendar traveled with merchants along the Silk Road, with scholars to universities in Spain and West Africa, and with soldiers across the Persian and Byzantine empires. Its adoption was a fundamental marker of religious identity and community. From the bustling markets of Baghdad to the royal courts of the Mughals in India and the sultanates of Southeast Asia, the Hijri system provided a unified framework for religious observance, determining the timing of Ramadan, Hajj, and other pillars of faith. It facilitated communication and record-keeping across a vast and diverse civilization, creating a transnational Islamic time that connected believers from Cordoba to Canton, regardless of their native language or local seasonal cycles. This process of calendrical colonization reached its global climax with the age of European imperialism. The Gregorian calendar, itself a product of papal authority, became an indispensable tool of colonial administration. Spanish friars in the Americas, British officials in India and Africa, and French administrators in Southeast Asia imposed the solar Gregorian system as the official calendar for law, government, and commerce. This was often a deliberate act of cultural suppression. Indigenous timekeeping systems, which were deeply woven into local ecology, agricultural practices, and spiritual life, were dismissed as primitive, pagan, or simply irrelevant to the needs of a modern, globalizing economy. The complex long count of the Maya, the intricate lunisolar systems of various Native American nations, and the diverse ceremonial calendars across Africa were pushed to the margins, their use discouraged or even outlawed. The colonial calendar severed the connection between time and place. A farming community that had for centuries planted its crops based on the flowering of a specific tree or the arrival of a particular bird was now told to plant according to a date on a piece of paper, a date that was determined by the position of the sun over Rome and decreed by a distant foreign power. The consequences of this global standardization are a profound mixed legacy. On one hand, it created an unprecedented level of global coordination. It is the reason a multinational corporation can schedule a meeting across a dozen time zones, why international treaties have a single effective date, and why scientific data can be compared across the globe. This shared temporal framework is the invisible backbone of our interconnected modern world. But this convenience came at a tremendous cost, the catastrophic loss of cultural and ecological knowledge. Each suppressed calendar represented a unique way of seeing and being in the world. The calendars of the Anishinaabe people, for instance, are named after the cyclical changes in the environment: the broken snowshoe moon, the maple sugar moon, the wild rice moon. These are not whimsical names, they are a detailed, hyper-local almanac of survival, a deep time record of a people's relationship with their specific ecosystem. To lose that calendar is to lose a library of ecological wisdom. This dynamic reveals the uncomfortable truth that our perception of time is not neutral. The global dominance of the Gregorian calendar is not a testament to its innate superiority, but a direct reflection of half a millennium of European economic, political, and military power. It made certain systems universal and condemned others to obscurity, framing them as mere folklore. Yet this story is not over. In a powerful act of cultural reclamation and resilience, revitalization movements are flourishing worldwide. Native American communities are working to teach and reintegrate their traditional calendars into community life. Scholars are painstakingly reconstructing pre-colonial African timekeeping systems from oral histories and artifacts. These efforts are about much more than nostalgia. They are a reclaiming of identity, a reconnection to ancestral knowledge, and a profound declaration that there are other valid, meaningful ways to mark our journey around the sun. The global clock may tick in Gregorian time, but in countless communities, an older, deeper rhythm is being heard once again. While empires rose and fell, and the great solar and lunar systems of antiquity spread across continents, a very different kind of timekeeping was taking root within the secluded walls of medieval European monasteries. Here, far from the civic squares and royal courts, time was not measured for harvest or taxation, but for the salvation of the soul. In the wake of the Roman Empire's collapse, as much of the continent descended into what was once called the Dark Ages, these religious communities became unlikely arcs of temporal knowledge, preserving and refining the art of the calendar not for worldly power but for divine worship. The rhythm of their days was not set by the sun or moon alone, but by a meticulously crafted cycle of prayer known as the liturgical year, a complex and beautiful system that wove the story of Christ's life and the veneration of saints directly into the fabric of every single day. The engine of this system was the Divine Office, a sequence of 8 prayer services that punctuated the 24-hour cycle, from the night vigils to the closing compline at bedtime. This required an incredible regimentation of time, a discipline that turned the monastery into a kind of spiritual clock, waking in the deep dark of night to sing psalms, gathering at dawn for lauds, and stopping all work for prayer at precise intervals throughout the day instilled a value for punctuality and regularity that was virtually unheard of in the secular world outside. This rigid schedule was governed by a combination of simple timekeeping tools, water clocks, sundials, and marked candles, and the careful observation of the stars for the nighttime hours. The monastic commitment to this temporal order created a culture of discipline that would, centuries later, provide a foundational mindset for the scientific method and the precise measurement of time in the modern world. The overarching framework for this daily rhythm was the magnificent and sprawling liturgical year itself. This was a dual-layered calendar that masterfully blended the stable, solar framework of the Julian calendar with a moving cycle of feasts and fasts based on the moon. The fixed dates, like Christmas on December 25th or the feast of St. John the Baptist on June 24th, were anchored to the solar calendar. But the most important events, most notably Easter, were calculated using a lunisolar formula that echoed the ancient problem of balancing sun and moon. Easter was defined as the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox, a calculation that required careful astronomical observation and complex tables to ensure the entire Christian world celebrated in unison. This system created a year that was both predictable and dynamic, a sacred journey that reenacted the life of Christ from the anticipation of Advent through the penance of Lent, the joy of Easter, and the fire of Pentecost. For the common person who was largely illiterate and without personal timekeeping devices, this liturgical cycle was the primary way they experienced and understood the passage of time. The year was not a string of anonymous months but a story told through its festivals. It was marked by the smell of evergreens at Christmas, the ashes on the forehead on Ash Wednesday, the bonfires on St. John's Eve, and the harvest feast of Michaelmas. Each saint's day carried its own traditions, its own specific foods, and its own blessings for home and field. This calendar did more than just tell time. It gave it flavor, scent, and meaning, connecting the humblest peasant's labor to the grand narrative of Christian history. The most beautiful and personal expression of this fusion of time and faith was the Book of Hours, a type of illuminated manuscript that became the bestseller of the Middle Ages. These were not books for priests, but for wealthy lay people who wished to incorporate the monastic rhythm of prayer into their own daily lives. A Book of Hours contained prayers for each of the canonical hours, psalms, and a calendar listing feast days. But its most stunning feature was its illumination, exquisite paintings that depicted the labors of the months and the signs of the zodiac. You would see a scene of a man warming by a fire for January, sowing seeds for March, or harvesting wheat for August. These images grounded the sacred calendar in the tangible reality of the agricultural year and the natural world, creating a powerful visual link between daily work, the changing seasons, and divine worship. To turn the pages of a Book of Hours was to walk through the year itself, guided by beauty and prayer, In an era often characterized by warfare, plague, and political fragmentation, this liturgical calendar provided a profound sense of stability, continuity, and hope. No matter the chaos in the world outside, inside the church and the home, the cycle continued. Advent would always follow the last Sunday after Pentecost. Lent would always lead to Easter, and the saints would always be honored on their appointed days. This offered a comforting promise that human life was part of a larger, orderly, and divine plan. The monastic obsession with ordering time became a vital lifeline, preserving not only the technical knowledge of calendrics through painstakingly copied manuscripts, but also a philosophical concept of time as something purposeful and sacred. They demonstrated that a calendar could be more than a tool for administration. It could be a vessel for discipline, a map for devotion, and a timeless anchor in a turbulent world, deeply embedding the rhythm of faith into the very heartbeat of daily existence. Yet, even as the monastic bells continued to ring across Europe, a far more secular and relentless rhythm was beginning to pulse, one that would ultimately drown out the celestial and spiritual cadences that had governed humanity for millennia. This new beat was not measured in prayers or harvest moons, but in the relentless turning of gears and the piercing shriek of the factory whistle. The Industrial Revolution did not just introduce new machines, it engineered a fundamental reinvention of time itself, transforming it from a natural force to be observed into a tangible commodity to be managed, measured, and monetized. The very essence of time was pulled from the heavens and locked inside the brass casing of a pocket watch, becoming the invisible engine of a new, industrialized world. This seismic shift was driven by a simple, brutal economic necessity. In the pre-industrial world, work was largely task-oriented. A farmer worked until the field was plowed, a blacksmith until the horseshoe was forged. The sun, the weather, and the season set the pace, but inside the sprawling textile mills and satanic factories of the 18th and 19th centuries, this organic rhythm was untenable. To maximize the output of expensive machinery and coordinate the labor of thousands of workers under a single roof, a new, rigid discipline was required. The factory owner's profitability depended on synchronizing human activity with the relentless, unchanging pace of the steam engine. Thus, the clock became the undisputed foreman. Workers were no longer paid for completing a task. They were paid for time spent at the task, by the hour, the minute, and eventually the second. Time itself had been neatly sliced into uniform, billable units, and the phrase, "time is money," coined by Benjamin Franklin, evolved from a clever aphorism into the iron law of industrial capitalism. This new tyranny of the clock created an unprecedented demand for personal timepieces. While grand public clocks had adorned church towers and town squares for centuries, they were now insufficient. Every factory manager, every railway conductor, every clerk needed to own a piece of time. Advances in manufacturing, pioneered by firms like Waltham and Elgin in America, made mass-produced, reliable, and affordable pocket watches a reality for the burgeoning middle class. For the first time in history, a significant portion of the population carried a precise measure of time in their waistcoat pocket, a constant reminder of the schedule they were bound to. This was a profound psychological shift. Time was no longer something you observed happening around you. It was a personal resource you carried with you, a resource that was constantly being spent, saved, or wasted. Perhaps the most visible and lasting legacy of this era was the creation of standardized time zones, an innovation born from the needs of the railroads. Before the Iron Horse, time was intensely local. Towns set their clocks by the sun, meaning that high noon occurred a few minutes later in a town just a few miles to the west. This charming parochialism became a nightmare for railway schedulers. A train timetable published in New York would be utterly useless in Pennsylvania without a complex and dangerous conversion. The potential for collisions and missed connections was enormous. The solution, proposed by railway companies and formalized at the International Meridian Conference in 1884, was to slice the globe into 24 neat time zones, each 1 hour apart. Within each zone, every clock would be synchronized to the same official time, regardless of the actual solar position. It was the ultimate act of imposing human order on natural chaos. The sun might be directly overhead at 11:45 according to the clock, but the schedule demanded it be called noon. For the first time, humanity began living by an artificial, abstract time that superseded the reality of the sky above. The Gregorian calendar, with its predictable, uniform months and leap year rules, was the perfect partner in this new regimented world. Its stability provided the essential framework for long-term contracts, international shipping schedules, quarterly financial reports, and 5-year plans. It allowed a factory in Manchester to coordinate a cotton shipment from India with precision, knowing exactly when the ship would leave and when it was expected to arrive. The calendar's solar regularity made the complex dance of global supply chains possible, turning time into a grid upon which the modern economy could be built. This industrialization of time delivered incredible gains in coordination and productivity, but it came at a profound human cost. It alienated people from the natural rhythms that had shaped human existence for thousands of years. The internal body clock, attuned to sunrise and sunset, was forced to conform to the arbitrary demands of the shift whistle. The agricultural year, with its periods of intense labor followed by times of rest, was replaced by the unending, monotonous grind of the 50-week work year. Time was stripped of its sacred and seasonal qualities, becoming instead a dry, quantitative metric for efficiency. This historical pivot is not a dusty relic. It is the direct ancestor of the pressure we feel today. The constant chase of deadlines, the 9-to-5 workday, the meticulous logging of billable hours, the relentless pursuit of productivity, hacks, all of this finds its origin in those soot-filled factories and the railway offices of the 18th and 19th centuries. We are still living in the world they built, a world where time is not a cycle to be experienced but a currency to be spent, and the clock on the wall remains the silent, demanding foreman of our modern lives. The relentless tick of the industrial clock created a new kind of chaos, a problem of scale that local sundials and town square bells could never solve. Imagine a world where every city, every town, every village set its clocks by its own noonday sun. In this patchwork of temporal sovereignty, noon in Boston was 12 minutes later than in New York. A train schedule printed in Philadelphia would be utterly useless in Pittsburgh without a complex and dangerous set of mental calculations. For the burgeoning network of railroads stitching continents together, this was more than an inconvenience, it was a lethal hazard. The lack of a synchronized timetable led to near misses, catastrophic collisions, and a logistical nightmare that threatened to derail the entire engine of progress. The very technology that shrank distances had inadvertently shattered time into 1,000 incompatible fragments, and the world urgently needed a new map not of places but of hours. The solution was forged not in a scientist's laboratory but in a conference room. In 1884, at the request of the United States, diplomats and scientists from 25 nations gathered in Washington, D.C. for the International Meridian Conference. Their mission was audaciously simple: to bring order to the global clock. After weeks of debate, a monumental compromise was reached. The world would be divided into 24 vertical slices, each spanning 15 degrees of longitude and representing 1 hour of the day. At the center of this new system was the prime meridian, the 0-degree longitude line, which was designated to run through the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England. This choice, giving us Greenwich Mean Time, or GMT, was a testament less to British scientific superiority and more to the sheer practical reality of its maritime empire. Over 70% of the world's shipping already used Greenwich-based charts for navigation. It was a decision that would etch the geopolitical power of the 19th century onto the face of time itself for centuries to come. Adopting this radical new system was a gradual and often grudging process. National pride and long-standing tradition proved formidable opponents to this rational, uniform standard. France, for instance, stubbornly kept Paris time for decades after the conference, a quiet act of defiance against the Anglo-centric order. For ordinary people, the change was deeply disorienting. To accept that clock noon and sun noon were now often completely different things required a fundamental rewiring of human intuition. People were being asked to trust a map over their own eyes, to believe in an abstract, networked time over the direct evidence of the sky above them. Yet, the sheer force of economic and technological necessity proved irresistible. The benefits for global trade, telegraph communication, and safe transportation were so overwhelming that piece by piece, nation by nation, the world synchronized. This was the final, crucial step in cementing the Gregorian calendar's role as the global civil standard, providing the stable, predictable daily framework upon which international affairs could be conducted. This push towards global temporal uniformity is one of the purest expressions of globalization itself. It is the invisible infrastructure that makes our modern world possible. A stock trader in Tokyo can execute a deal with a broker in London at an precisely agreed-upon moment. An airline can coordinate a fleet of aircraft circling the globe with split-second precision. A multinational corporation can host a video conference with employees on 6 different continents, all of whom know exactly when to log on. This seamless coordination in diplomacy, commerce, and science is the direct legacy of that 1884 conference. It represents an incredible human achievement, a voluntary agreement to sacrifice a degree of local individuality for the immense benefits of global connection and understanding. However, this drive for uniformity has never been without its critics or costs. The imposition of a single time standard is often viewed as a subtle but potent form of cultural imperialism, a way of steamrolling local rhythms and traditions in the name of efficiency. The ongoing, often heated debates over daylight saving time are a perfect microcosm of this tension. The practice of artificially shifting clocks forward an hour in the spring is repeatedly challenged by those who question its modern utility and decry the disruption it causes to sleep cycles and agricultural patterns. Similarly, the celebration of the New Year on January 1st is a global event, yet it sits alongside a vibrant tapestry of alternative New Years that hold far deeper cultural resonance for billions: the Lunar New Year in East Asia, Nowruz in Iran and Central Asia, Rosh Hashanah in Judaism, and Diwali for many in India. These are not just different dates, they represent entirely different philosophies of time, renewal, and the human relationship with the cosmos. Our current global time structure, therefore, is not a perfect system but a pragmatic compromise, a delicate negotiation between astronomical accuracy and human convenience. It shows how modern, interconnected needs have relentlessly reshaped ancient systems, sanding down their unique edges to allow them to fit together into a functional whole. We live in a world that runs on Greenwich Mean Time and the Gregorian calendar, but we dream, celebrate, and find meaning in the older, deeper rhythms that these systems could never fully erase. This duality is the defining characteristic of modern timekeeping, a single, universal clock for our shared global life, and a multitude of personal, cultural clocks for our souls. Yet even this masterfully engineered Gregorian system, the crown jewel of global timekeeping, harbors a tiny, hidden flaw, not in its mathematical formula, but in the very planet it was designed to measure. We built a clock of breathtaking precision to track the sun, only to discover that the sun itself is not a perfectly reliable metronome. The Earth's rotation is gradually, almost imperceptibly, slowing down. This deceleration is primarily due to the gravitational tug of war between the Earth and the Moon, a dance that creates tidal friction. Think of it as a gentle, continuous braking force applied by the ocean's waters sloshing against the seafloors. This means the astronomical day, the time it takes for the Earth to complete one full rotation, is actually getting longer by about 1.7 milliseconds per century. It seems infinitesimal, but over decades and centuries, that fractional lag adds up, creating a growing divergence between two different definitions of time. This revelation forced the creation of a new, even more precise standard, Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. This is the time standard that governs our modern world, from the internet to air traffic control. But UTC is a fascinating hybrid. It is based on the incredibly stable vibrations of atoms, specifically the frequency of the cesium-133 atom. This atomic time is unchangeable, a perfect, unwavering pulse that is accurate to within 1 second over millions of years. Yet we cannot simply abandon the sun. Our biology, our agriculture, and our historical connection to the cosmos are tied to the cycle of daylight and darkness. So, UTC is kept within 0.9 seconds of the older, astronomically based universal time. To maintain this delicate balance, a small group of scientists at the International Earth Rotation and Reference Systems Service face a unique responsibility. They are the world's timekeepers, and they have the authority to add a leap second whenever the two time scales drift too far apart. These leap seconds are the modern world's most subtle and precise adjustment. A single tick inserted at the end of June or December to allow the sluggish Earth to catch up with our hyper-accurate atomic clocks. The decision is not made on a rigid schedule. It depends on the actual, measured rotation of the planet, which can be influenced by factors far beyond tidal friction, including the melting of polar ice caps, large earthquakes, and even changes in the Earth's core. When a leap second is declared, the official time sequence goes from 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds to 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 60 seconds before finally clicking over to midnight. For almost everyone on the planet, this event is completely invisible. But for the digital infrastructure that underpins our civilization, that extra second can be a moment of high anxiety. This is because our global network of computers, financial trading algorithms, and communication systems are built to run on the assumption that time is a continuous, unbroken stream of seconds. A leap second is an anomaly, a 61-second minute that can confuse software that has not been explicitly programmed to handle it. In the past, leap seconds have been linked to temporary outages for major websites, glitches in airline reservation systems, and hiccups in financial markets where million-dollar trades are executed in microseconds. The precise timing of the GPS satellite constellation, which is fundamental to navigation for everything from smartphones to cargo ships, must constantly account for these tiny adjustments to remain accurate. The quest for perfect time, therefore, is not just an academic exercise. It is a critical engineering challenge essential for the smooth operation of our technologically dependent world. This ongoing effort represents the final, fascinating chapter in humanity's ancient quest to harmonize our created order with the natural world. we have journeyed from stacking stones to track the moon to manipulating the fundamental vibrations of matter itself. The ancient Babylonian priest who added an extra month to realign his calendar with the seasons would instantly understand the purpose of the modern scientist adding a leap second. It is the same fundamental drive to impose order on a slightly irregular universe. Our tools have evolved from stone observatories to atomic clocks, but our mission remains unchanged. Each leap second is a quiet testament to this enduring collaboration, a humbling reminder that despite all our technological prowess, we must still occasionally pause our perfect atomic clock and wait for just a single heartbeat for the Earth to finish its turn. And now, this ancient architecture of hours and days has found its most powerful and pervasive vessel yet, not carved in stone or printed on paper, but encoded in silicon and light. The digital calendars on our phones and computers, those seemingly modern tools like Google Calendar or Outlook, are not a break from the past, they are the ultimate culmination of it. They are the silent, global heirs to the Gregorian reform, the Babylonian intercalations, and the monastic schedule, embedding their ancient logic into the very core of every notification and shared invitation. With a few taps, we can coordinate a meeting across a dozen time zones, an act of synchronization that would have required an international treaty just a century and a half ago. This is the Gregorian framework operating at the speed of light, its solar regularity providing the flawless, unquestioned bedrock for the entire digital economy. Yet, in a beautiful nod to the diverse tapestry of human timekeeping, these platforms do not force a monolithic view. They allow us to overlay this Gregorian grid with the older, deeper rhythms they once sought to replace. You can subscribe to a calendar that shows the phases of the moon, pulling the sacred Tzolk'in of the Maya into your weekly planner. You can add holidays for Ramadan, Diwali, or Yom Kippur, ensuring the lunar and lunisolar cycles of Islam, Hinduism, and Judaism are respected within a global schedule. They acknowledge cultural events from the Chinese New Year to Juneteenth, creating a patchwork of temporal identities that can coexist on a single screen. This functionality is a digital echo of the pluralistic timekeeping found in India or the dual consciousness of modern China, proving that global efficiency does not have to mean cultural erasure. The very features we use most intuitively are direct descendants of ancient concepts. Setting a recurring event for every Monday is our way of honoring the 7-day planetary cycle gifted to us by the Babylonians. The automatic calculation of a meeting's time for a colleague in Tokyo is the direct, automated child of the railway time zones that standardize the globe. When your phone automatically adjusts for daylight saving time, it is executing a modern and often controversial form of intercalation, artificially shifting the clock to maximize sunlight hours in a practice that still disrupts our natural rhythms, much like the Gregorian correction of 1582. These tools have made the management of time so effortless that we rarely stop to consider the millennia of struggle, observation, and innovation that made such precision possible. But this incredible efficiency comes with a profound psychological cost, intensifying the Industrial Revolution's commodification of time to a fever pitch. The factory whistle has been replaced by the push notification, a constant, nagging reminder that every second is accountable. The calendar is no longer a passive guide. It is an active, demanding manager that can fill every white space with a commitment, creating a sense of busyness that often masquerades as productivity. The pressure to optimize and schedule every moment can sever our connection to the natural, seasonal, and spontaneous rhythms of life, creating a state of perpetual anticipation for the next event on the grid rather than an engagement with the present moment. Most fascinating of all is the fact that these powerful tools almost never question their own underlying operating system. No major digital calendar offers an option to view your schedule through the lens of the Mayan long count or to structure your year according to the 60-year cycle of the Chinese zodiac. The Gregorian framework is presented not as one system among many, but as time itself, the invisible water in which we all swim. This silent assumption is the ultimate testament to the success of these ancient architects. Their work was so robust, so effectively woven into the fabric of global administration and daily life, that it has become the default reality for the digital age. Our most futuristic technologies, from artificial intelligence scheduling assistance to complex project management software, all rest upon this ancient foundation, proving that the most enduring legacy of the past is not the monument we can see, but the invisible code we live by without ever thinking to question it. Yet even in this age of hyper-synchronized global time, a powerful and vital countercurrent flows just beneath the surface. Across the world, communities are engaged in a quiet act of resistance, not with protests or politics, but by simply living according to a different rhythm. They are the keepers of ancestral time, safeguarding calendars that offer a profound alternative to the Gregorian tick-tock, asserting that how we measure our days is deeply intertwined with who we are. This isn't about nostalgia, it's a conscious choice to preserve cultural identity, maintain a sacred connection to the environment, and uphold a worldview where time is a cycle of meaning, not just a countdown to a deadline. For many indigenous cultures, this temporal resistance is a fundamental act of survival and sovereignty. The Maori of Aotearoa, New Zealand, for instance, live by the Maramataka, a lunar cycle calendar that is a detailed ecological and spiritual guide. Each night of the moon has a name and a specific energy, indicating the optimal time for activities, from planting kumara and fishing for particular species to holding community meetings or resting. The phase of Tangaroa, for example, is known for its abundance and is excellent for ocean fishing, while the nights of Otane are better for staying home and sharing knowledge. This isn't a quaint folk tradition. It's a sophisticated science of place, a way of knowing that has allowed the Maori to thrive in their environment for centuries. By revitalizing the Maramataka, they are not just tracking the moon, they are reclaiming a relationship with their land and waters that was systematically suppressed by colonization, demonstrating that true sustainability is knowing when to act, not just how. Similarly, numerous Native American nations continue to guide their ceremonies and community life by their own traditional calendars, which are often deeply woven into the local ecosystem. The Lakota people, for example, historically marked time by a combination of lunar cycles and key seasonal events, such as the ripening of the chokecherries or the rutting season of the elk. Their year was not a straight line but a great hoop, with ceremonies like the sun dance anchoring the community to the cosmos at a specific, powerful time. For the Hopi, their ceremonial calendar dictates a complex cycle of dances and rituals throughout the year, each one intended to maintain balance and bring rain for the crops. This practice ensures that their cultural knowledge is passed down through generations, not in books, but in the lived experience of the ceremony itself, timed to the rhythm of the earth and sky as their ancestors understood it. It is a declaration that their time, their history, and their future are their own to define. This preservation of alternative time is not limited to indigenous communities. Major world religions maintain vibrant, parallel temporal realities that govern the lives of billions. The entire Islamic world pivots on the Hijri lunar calendar, with its holy month of Ramadan migrating through the seasons. Jewish life is structured around the lunisolar Hebrew calendar, ensuring that Passover always falls in the spring. These are not private beliefs. They are public, communal schedules that often take precedence over the secular calendar, creating a powerful sense of shared identity and purpose that operates on a different frequency from the mainstream. Even within the secular West, there have been bold attempts to break free from the Gregorian mold. The French Revolutionary Calendar, introduced in 1793, was a radical endeavor to de-Christianize time and create a new, rationalist framework for the citizenry. It featured 10-day weeks, renamed months based on natural phenomena like rain and wind, and dated year 1 from the founding of the Republic. Though short-lived, it stands as a fascinating historical testament to the idea that reshaping time is a fundamental tool for reshaping society. In the 20th century, the world calendar proposal sought to fix what its advocates saw as the Gregorian calendar's irrational irregularities, creating a perpetual, identical year with standardized quarters. While it never gained official adoption, its continued advocacy highlights a persistent desire to re-engineer time for greater logic and global harmony. Perhaps one of the most beautiful examples of a living alternative is the Ethiopian calendar, which the country uses officially alongside the Gregorian. This system, with its 13 months, 12 of 30 days, and a 13th month of 5 or 6 days, puts Ethiopia in a unique temporal zone. For them, the new year arrives on September 11th, and when the rest of the world is celebrating the turn of the millennium in the year 2000, Ethiopians were still in 1992. This isn't a quirk, it's a point of national pride, a continuous thread connecting them to an ancient Christian tradition that predates the Gregorian reform. It shapes the rhythm of business, government, and religious life, offering a tangible, daily experience of time that is distinctly their own. These acts of temporal resistance are far more than cultural artifacts. They are vital contributions to our global understanding. They challenge the hegemony of a single, efficiency-driven model of time, reminding us that other, more holistic rhythms are not only possible but are already being lived. They offer perspectives where time is not a resource to be exploited, but a relationship to be nurtured with the land, with community, and with the spirit. In a world facing ecological crisis and social fragmentation, these ancient and alternative calendars provide more than just dates. They offer wisdom on how to live in balance, reminding us that the true value of time is not in how much of it we have, but in how meaningfully we choose to live within its eternal, turning wheel. This relentless pursuit of a more perfect calendar did not end with Pope Gregory XIII. For centuries, a fascinating undercurrent of thinkers, economists, and even visionaries within the Catholic Church itself have looked at our modern Gregorian system and seen not a finished masterpiece, but a frustratingly flawed relic, a patchwork of Roman emperors' whims and medieval politics that is ripe for an upgrade. They argue that its irregularities, months of differing lengths, quarters of unequal duration, and the constant annual shuffle of which dates fall on create needless complexity for everything from financial accounting to project planning. This enduring dissatisfaction has given rise to a series of ambitious calendar reform movements, bold proposals to rationalize time itself, creating systems of such elegant simplicity that they promise to make our Gregorian calendar look as antiquated as a sundial in a world of atomic clocks. One of the most compelling and persistent ideas is the International Fixed Calendar, also known as the Cotsworth Plan after its primary advocate, English businessman Moses B. Cotsworth. Its proposition is beautifully simple: 13 months, each containing exactly 28 days for a clean total of 364 days. Every month would look identical, always beginning on a Sunday and ending on a Saturday. The leftover day and an additional one in leap years would exist as special year-end holidays outside any month, dedicated to global celebration and rest. Imagine the sheer efficiency. Your birthday would always fall on the same day of the week forever. Business forecasting would be dramatically simplified, with each quarter containing exactly 91 days and 13 identical weeks. For statisticians, retailers, and logistics managers, this kind of predictability is a dream of pure order, a way to eliminate the annual guesswork caused by our current lopsided months. Another major proposal, the world calendar, takes a slightly different approach, aiming for minimal disruption while still achieving a perennial or forever repeating structure. It retains the 12-month year but reconfigures it so that each quarter is identical. The first month of every quarter would have 31 days, and the following 2 months would have 30. This creates a consistent 91-day quarter divisible into 13 weeks. Similar to the fixed calendar, it designates a single World's Day at the end of the year as an international holiday, with a second leap year day added in the same spot every 4 years. The genius of the world calendar is that it keeps the familiar 12-month framework while still delivering the holy grail of calendar reform. A system where any given date always falls on the same weekday, year after year after year. Despite their logical appeal and the powerful backing of entities like the League of Nations and later, early United Nations committees, these reforms have all ultimately foundered, dashed against the immovable rocks of human culture and tradition. The most significant opposition has often come from major religious groups. For Jews, Christians, and Muslims who observe a seventh-day Sabbath, the 13-month calendar's requirement of 13 equal months of 28 days presents a theological crisis. 28 is perfectly divisible by 7, meaning every month would have exactly 4 Sabbaths, but 13 times 4 is 52, leaving 1 extra Sabbath unaccounted for on that 365th day that exists outside the monthly cycle. This creates a profound problem. Would that final day of the year be a Sabbath, breaking the 7-day cycle that has been unbroken since Genesis? For many faiths, this rhythmic, unbroken weekly cycle is considered divinely ordained, a sacred pattern that cannot be interrupted by a human-made calendar, no matter how rational. Beyond religious doctrine, the sheer economic and social cost of transitioning is almost unimaginable. Rewriting every piece of software, every legal contract with a date, every historical record, and retraining the entire global population on a new system would be a logistical and financial nightmare costing trillions. There is also a deep, if sometimes unspoken, attachment to the quirks of our current calendar. The uneven months, for all their irrationality, give the year a certain texture and character. The long stretch of summer, the quick pace of February, the familiar holiday placements, these are the grooves in which our lives run, and the idea of sanding them down to a featureless plane of identical months feels, to many, like a loss of culture itself. These failed proposals, however, are far from worthless. They serve as powerful thought experiments that hold up a mirror to our relationship with time. They force us to ask a fundamental question: is the primary purpose of a calendar to be a perfectly rational tool for business and science, or is it a vessel for culture, tradition, and the sacred rhythms that give our lives meaning? The tension is never between a good system and a bad one, but between two different definitions of what makes a system good. The enduring debate highlights that calendar design is not a closed project from the past, but a conversation that is very much still alive, a conversation about what we value most in the relentless march of days. Perhaps the next great reform will not come from a top-down decree, but from the bottom up, as digital systems begin to layer new, more logical scheduling tools over the old Gregorian framework, creating a hybrid reality where we live in both times at once, using the rational for planning and the traditional for living. a dual timekeeping consciousness that may be the most fitting tribute to ancient and endlessly inventive architects of time. But beyond the mechanics of intercalation and the politics of standardization lies a deeper, more intimate legacy, one that is etched not on stone or paper, but directly onto the human mind. Every calendar, from the Mayan long count to the Gregorian wall hanger in your kitchen, is far more than a simple tracking device. It is a powerful psychological framework that actively shapes how we perceive, experience, and ultimately value the very flow of our lives. These systems don't just measure time, they manufacture its meaning, conditioning entire civilizations to see their existence through a particular temporal lens, whether as a straight arrow shot toward a destination or as a great, turning wheel of return. Consider the profound psychological divide between a linear and a cyclical model of time. The Gregorian calendar, which dominates the modern globalized world, is a relentlessly linear system. It counts forward from a fixed point in the past, the birth of Christ, and marches endlessly toward an unknown future. This forward-thrusting arrow of time inherently promotes a mindset of progress, growth, and ultimate goals. It's the engine of our ambition, fueling our focus on deadlines, 5-year plans, and retirement savings. We are constantly preparing for a tomorrow that is meant to be better than today, living in a state of perpetual anticipation. This can be a powerful motivator, but it also carries a hidden psychological tax: the anxiety of the unfinished, the pressure of the next milestone, and a potential disconnection from the present moment, which is always seen as merely a stepping stone to something else. Now, contrast this with the ancient cyclical time embodied by systems like the Chinese agricultural calendar, the Mayas' repeating cycles of creation, or the great cosmic epochs of Hindu philosophy. In this view, time is not a line but a circle, or more accurately, a spiral. Seasons return, festivals repeat, and history is not a march of unique events but a pattern of recurring themes and lessons. This framework fosters a vastly different psychology. It emphasizes renewal, tradition, and acceptance. There is a deep comfort in the certainty of return, the knowledge that after winter, spring will always come again. This worldview encourages presence and mindfulness, an engagement with the current phase of the cycle rather than a frantic rush to escape it. It values the lessons of the past not as distant history, but as immediately relevant wisdom for navigating the present turn of the wheel. The stress of a linear deadline is replaced by the rhythm of a natural lifeline. This psychological programming seeps into the most mundane aspects of our daily existence. Take the humble 7-day week, a concept we accept as a natural law, but one that was gifted to us by Babylonian astrologers who associated each day with one of the 7 celestial bodies they could see. This arbitrary division has profoundly structured human life on a global scale, creating a universal rhythm of work and rest. It installs a psychological metronome in our brains: 5 days of expenditure, 2 days of recovery. This cycle generates its own unique pressures: the Sunday scaries, the frantic productivity of a Friday afternoon, the cultural notion that Monday is a fresh start. Our entire economy and social life pulsate to this 7-day beat, a testament to how an ancient astronomical observation can dictate the modern world's mood swings. Understanding that our timekeeping is a cultural construct, not a neutral fact of nature, is a liberating revelation. It means the frantic, future-anxious pace of modern life is not an inevitable condition of existence. It is the psychological outcome of a specific system we have adopted. By examining ancient and alternative calendars, we catch glimpses of other ways to experience time. We see cultures that value seasonal alignment over quarterly profits, that honor ritual repetition over relentless innovation, and that find meaning in the recurring patterns of the cosmos rather than in a personal timeline of achievement. This isn't just an academic exercise, it's a potential gateway to a healthier relationship with time itself. In our hyper-connected, deadline-driven world where burnout is a common affliction, these ancient systems offer psychological antidotes. The cyclical view reminds us to honor periods of rest as natural and necessary, not as signs of laziness. The emphasis on seasonal awareness can ground us in the tangible reality of our local environment, counteracting the abstract, globalized tick-tock of digital clocks. By recognizing that our pace is dictated by a calendar, we gain the power to consciously step outside its rhythm, even for a moment, to experience time not as a quantity to be managed, but as a quality to be savored. This mental shift, this hidden ability to reframe our experience of life's passage, is perhaps the most profound and personal gift from the ancient architects of time. Consider for a moment the words you use without a second thought to schedule a meeting or plan a vacation. These terms are not neutral labels. They are linguistic fossils, each one a tiny time capsule preserving the beliefs, priorities, and celestial observations of the civilizations that forged them. The very name of our first month, January, is a direct invocation of Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, gates, and transitions. He was always depicted with two faces, one looking back into the past, the other peering forward into the future. This is a stunningly apt metaphor for the threshold of a new year, a moment of reflection and anticipation that the Romans so perfectly encoded into the permanent structure of time itself. Similarly, the month of March carries the fierce energy of Mars, the god of war, because it originally marked the start of the campaign season, when the legions could finally march after the winter thaw. Every time we write the date, we are unconsciously paying homage to a 2,000-year-old pantheon, keeping these ancient deities alive in our emails and calendar alerts. This divine imprint extends to every single day of our week. Our hurried Monday mornings and celebratory Friday nights are framed by a cosmic cast of characters. Wednesday is not just Hump Day, it is Woden's Day, a direct tribute to the Norse king of the gods, Odin. Thursday thunders with the power of Thor, while Friday shimmer with the influence of Frigg or Freyja, Norse goddesses of love and fertility. Even Sunday and Monday, seemingly straightforward, are quiet tributes to the most dominant celestial bodies. This means that the entire rhythm of our modern work life, the universal cycle of grind and respite, is set to a beat established by the mythological traditions of Germanic and Norse tribes, filtered through the Roman calendar and cemented into our language. It is a breathtaking thought that the schedule governing global stock markets and school semesters is ultimately based on the stories ancient peoples told around fires to explain the world above them. Beyond the names of months and days, our legal and financial systems are built upon the very framework of the calendar, and this dependency is baked into our language. Terms like fiscal year, calendar year, and lease term are not just business jargon. They are explicit acknowledgments that our agreements and economies are bound within these human-made cycles of time. The concept of a leap year is a particularly fascinating example. It is a technical fix, a mathematical solution to an astronomical problem, yet it has become a common cultural reference point. The one extra day we playfully acknowledge every 4 years. This term has leapt from the pages of the Julian reform into our everyday conversations, a testament to how a complex scientific adjustment can become a simple, shared feature of our temporal landscape. Perhaps the most poetic echoes are found in the metaphors we use to describe our own lives, phrases so woven into our speech that we forget their literal origins. When we decide to turn over a new leaf, We are hearkening back to a time when calendars were physical objects, often in the form of a book where each day or month was printed on its own page or leaf. To turn that page was to literally and metaphorically move on from the past and start fresh. We speak of closing a chapter or an event being water under the bridge, both phrases that conceptualize time as a linear narrative, much like the Gregorian calendar itself encourages us to do. These are not dead metaphors, they are active, living proof of how deeply the technology of the calendar has shaped not just how we measure time, but how we think about our own progress through life, envisioning our personal histories as stories with pages to be turned and chapters to be completed. Yet for all the calendars we have managed to decode and the systems we have come to understand, the historical record is also filled with profound and tantalizing silences. Scattered across the globe are enigmatic artifacts and indecipherable inscriptions that serve as haunting reminders of how much sophisticated knowledge has been irrevocably lost to time. These are the unsolved puzzles, the ghostly echoes of entire worldviews that vanished before they could be fully recorded, challenging our modern arrogance and proving that the unmasking of time's ancient architects is a journey far from over. Perhaps the most stunning example of this lost genius is the Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of a Greek island at the dawn of the 20th century. This complex bundle of corroded bronze gears seemed so anachronistic that it baffled scholars for decades. It appeared to be a medieval astrolabe, yet it was found among artifacts from the 1st century before the Common Era. Only through painstaking analysis using advanced X-ray and imaging technology have we begun to grasp its breathtaking complexity. We now know it was an intricate mechanical computer, a device of at least 30 interlocking meshed gears that could predict the movements of the sun and moon, track the cycles of the planets, and even forecast eclipses with remarkable accuracy. It displayed this information on dials and rings, effectively modeling the known cosmos inside a wooden case. This was not a tool for farmers, it was a masterpiece of philosophical engineering, a device that demonstrated a Hellenistic understanding of astronomy and mechanical precision, so advanced that nothing comparable would appear again for over 1,000 years. Its very existence forces us to completely re-evaluate the technological capabilities of the ancient world, suggesting a level of scientific sophistication that historical texts never dared to describe. Who were the thinkers who designed it? How widespread was this knowledge? The mechanism stands alone, a cryptic message from the past that whispers of entire schools of thought and innovation that history has entirely forgotten. Equally mysterious are the cryptic petroglyphs carved into the rocks of Easter Island. While the massive Moai statues capture the world's imagination, it is the lesser-known, intricate symbols found at the Orongo ceremonial village that may hold the key to the Rapa Nui people's conception of time. These carvings, known as the Tangata Monu or birdman cult glyphs, depict a surreal figure with a bird's head and a human body. Many researchers, including linguists and archaeologists, suspect these are not merely decorative but encode a complex calendrical system, one that wove together the lunar cycle with the annual migration of the sooty tern, a seabird central to their survival and ritual life. The arrival of these birds signaled the start of a sacred season of competition and renewal, but the code to this calendar has been lost. The last traditional priests who could interpret its meaning were taken captive or perished in the 19th century, victims of slave raids and disease. Today, the glyphs remain a silent stone library, their astronomical and seasonal information locked away, a poignant testament to how fragile a culture's knowledge can be when its living bearers are gone. We can see the patterns, but the key to reading them has vanished into the Pacific winds. Even a system as extensively studied as the Mayas is not fully understood. While we can read the dates on their monuments and comprehend the broad strokes of their long count and calendar round, scholars readily admit that we have likely only recovered a fraction of their total temporal philosophy. The four extant Maya codices, the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier, are precious survivors of a vast literary tradition that was almost entirely destroyed by Spanish clergy. These folded bark paper books are dense with astronomical tables and ritual guides, but they are also filled with passages and symbols whose nuances elude us. We understand the mechanics of their math, but the deeper mythological and prophetic context, the specific stories and beliefs attached to certain cycles, remains shrouded in ambiguity. Every decade, new archaeological discoveries, like the stunning murals at San Bartolo or the hieroglyphic stairway at El Achiotl, add new pieces to the puzzle, but they also introduce new questions, revealing layers of complexity we never anticipated. The Maya calendar is not a closed book we have finished reading. It is a text where we understand the alphabet and the grammar, but are still missing countless pages of the narrative. These enduring mysteries are what keep the field of historical astronomy and archaeology so vibrantly alive. They are a powerful antidote to the notion that we have the past all figured out. Each new technological advancement, from ground-penetrating radar that can reveal buried structures without excavation to artificial intelligence that can cross-reference thousands of inscriptions in seconds, offers a fresh chance to crack these ancient codes. A newly discovered temple alignment, a freshly deciphered verb in a long-dead language, a satellite image revealing a geoglyph. Any one of these could be the key that unlocks another lost calendar, another way of seeing time. This ongoing quest is a humbling and thrilling reminder that history is not a static record but a dynamic detective story. The architects of time left behind more than just their finished systems. They left behind puzzles that continue to challenge and inspire us, ensuring that the conversation between the past and the present never truly ends, and that the next great revelation about how humanity learned to measure eternity might be waiting just beneath the sands or hidden in plain sight on a weather-worn stone. Looking toward the horizon of tomorrow, the very fabric of timekeeping is poised for another revolutionary transformation, driven not by priest astronomers observing the heavens, but by engineers manipulating the fundamental particles of reality. We stand at the precipice of an era where our quest for precision is moving beyond the astronomical and into the quantum realm. The most advanced timekeepers today are atomic clocks, like the stunningly accurate strontium lattice clocks, which would not lose a second for 15 billion years, a time span longer than the current age of our universe. But the next generation, quantum clocks, promise to harness the bizarre principles of quantum entanglement, linking particles across space to create networks of time, keeping so stable and synchronized that they could detect infinitesimal distortions in spacetime itself, like the gravitational waves predicted by Einstein. This isn't just about measuring seconds more accurately. It's about using time as a sensor to listen to the very groans and murmurs of the cosmos, transforming our understanding of physics and our place within it. Simultaneously, our digital world is forging new, decentralized ways to certify time that are immune to human tampering or institutional error. Blockchain technology, the foundation of cryptocurrencies, relies on a revolutionary concept for timestamping transactions. Each block in the chain is cryptographically linked to the one before it and contains a timestamp, creating an immutable, publicly verifiable ledger of events that unfolds in a precise, unchangeable sequence. This technology is already being used to create notarization services that can verify the existence of a digital document at a specific moment in time without any centralized authority, a concept that would have been unimaginable to the Babylonian scribes etching their accounts into clay. These digital timestamps are becoming the bedrock of a new kind of historical record, one where every contract, every creative work, and every piece of data can be anchored to an objective, global timeline with ironclad certainty. Yet, even as we accelerate into this hyper-precise digital future, a powerful cultural countercurrent is pulling us back toward more organic, ecological rhythms. The growing movements around sustainability, mindfulness, and reconnecting with nature are fueling a renewed appreciation for the very calendars our industrial age sought to replace. People are rediscovering the profound wisdom in systems like the Maori Maramataka or the Lakota winter count, which don't just mark time but describe a relationship with it. In a world grappling with climate change, the idea of a calendar based on the blooming of specific flowers, the migration of birds, or the run of salmon is no longer seen as primitive, but as profoundly intelligent, a hyper-local, sustainable model for living in harmony with an ecosystem rather than dominating it. This isn't a rejection of technology, but a search for balance, a desire to layer the global precision of atomic time with the grounded, meaningful pace of place-based time, creating a richer, more nuanced temporal existence. This push and pull between global standard and local meaning will face its ultimate test when humanity becomes a multi-planetary species. The moment we establish a permanent colony on Mars, the Gregorian calendar, for all its global dominance, will become a historical artifact, a piece of terrestrial nostalgia. A day on Mars, called a sol, is approximately 39 minutes and 35.244 seconds longer than an Earth day. Its year lasts 668.6 sols, roughly 687 Earth days. How will a human society tell time in such an environment? Will we stubbornly impose a 24-hour clock on a 24-hour, 39-minute day, causing our sleep cycles to slowly drift out of sync with the clock on the wall? Or will we invent entirely new time zones, a new calendar with months that reflect the peculiarities of the Martian seasons and its two irregularly shaped moons, Phobos and Deimos, racing across the sky? The first settlers will be forced to become the new architects of time, engineering a system from scratch that must serve both the practical needs of survival and the profound human need for rhythm and ritual under an alien sun. This forward momentum has even sparked modern proposals for radical reform, visions that make the Gregorian adjustment look like a minor tweak. For centuries, visionaries have dreamed of decimalizing time, creating a system where the day is divided into 10 hours, each hour into 100 minutes, and each minute into 100 seconds. Proponents argue this would bring a beautiful mathematical simplicity to our lives, making calculations of work shifts, travel time, and scientific data infinitely easier. Another futuristic concept is the Holocene calendar, which adds exactly 10,000 years to the current Gregorian year, setting its start date to the beginning of the Holocene geological epoch. This frames all of human civilization within a single, ongoing timeline, removing the religious bias of the Anno Domini system and offering a more universal, scientific perspective on our history. While the chance of the world adopting such a system anytime soon is virtually zero, these ideas are valuable thought experiments that challenge us to question the invisible structures we take for granted, just as the ancient Maya and Egyptians once did. Ultimately, no matter how sophisticated our quantum clocks become or how far we travel into the cosmos, the foundational principles laid down by the original architects of time will remain eternally relevant. Their relentless pursuit of accuracy, their understanding of time's inherent cyclicity, and their insistence on weaving cultural meaning into its very fabric are not outdated concepts. They are the bedrock upon which all future timekeeping must be built. The legacy of these ancient visionaries is not a set of obsolete rules, but a living tradition of inquiry and adaptation. Their work is a testament to the human spirit's need to find order in chaos, meaning in the void, and connection across the generations. As we stand on the brink of designing the calendars for worlds we have not yet set foot on, we are not leaving their legacy behind. We are fulfilling it, proving that the most enduring human invention is not a specific calendar, but the audacious, beautiful, and never-ending project of mapping eternity itself. From the first notches on a bone marking the passing lunar cycles to the silent, perfect pulse of an atomic clock deep within a laboratory, our journey to capture time is one of humanity's most profound and enduring collaborations with the universe itself. We have stood beside the priest astronomers of Babylon as they calculated their 19-year cycle, felt the immense authority of a pope decreeing that 10 days would vanish from existence, and marveled at the Mayan scribes who mapped the cosmos with a precision that defies belief. What began as a desperate struggle for survival, a need to predict the Nile's flood or the arrival of winter, evolved into a magnificent fusion of science, spirituality, and raw political power, giving us the shared tomorrow we so often take for granted. These systems are far more than clever algorithms for tracking days. They are the ultimate expression of a universal human drive to impose order on chaos, to find rhythm in randomness, and to weave our fleeting lives into a narrative far grander than ourselves. The Mayan long count was a map of sacred history. The Egyptian calendar was the very heartbeat of an empire. The Gregorian reform was an attempt to realign human law with divine will. In every carved stone, every papyrus scroll, and every papal bull, we see the same undeniable truth. A calendar is never just a tool for measurement. It is a declaration of values, a framework for meaning, and the invisible architecture upon which civilizations are built. And that legacy is not confined to history books. It is woven into the very fabric of our daily existence. It dictates the rhythm of our work week, a 7-day cycle gifted to us by Babylonian astrologers. It lives on in the names of our months, which paid daily homage to forgotten Roman gods and emperors. It structures our global economy, our international diplomacy, and our most cherished family holidays. The pressure we feel to meet a deadline, the joy of a long holiday weekend, the quiet reflection of a birthday, all of these experiences are shaped by the decisions of ancient architects whose names we've forgotten, but whose work continues to orchestrate the symphony of modern life. As we hurtle into an increasingly digital and interconnected future, the lessons from these master builders have never been more relevant. We now face the challenge of designing time for entirely new contexts, from the blockchain's immutable timestamps to the radical calendar reforms that may one day govern a colony on Mars. Will we choose systems of pure, sterile efficiency, or will we remember to weave in the essential human needs for ritual, rest, and connection to the natural world? The answer lies in understanding that timekeeping is not a technical problem to be solved, but a cultural story to be written, a story about who we are, what we value, and how we choose to live together on this spinning rock hurtling through space. So the next time you glance at your phone to check the date or mark a birthday in your planner, take a fleeting moment to appreciate the breathtaking depth of history behind that simple number. You are participating in a project that spans millennia, a continuous human conversation with the cosmos. Thank you for joining this exploration of time's great architects. If you've enjoyed uncovering these layers of history with us, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the hidden frameworks that shape our world.